The beam of Elena's heavy tactical flashlight sliced through the suffocating, pitch-black dark of the sub-basement. Outside, the midnight storm was tearing at the glass walls of her forest estate, but down here, the only sound was the frantic, uneven rhythm of her own breathing. She hadn't come down here to spy. She had only been looking for a backup generator switch after the power grid failed. But then her boots struck something solid in the far corner. A massive, industrial-grade deep freezer hidden behind a false wall of concrete blocks. Elena lunged forward, her fingers trembling violently as she gripped the heavy latch. With a sharp metallic groan, the lid swung open. A cloud of thick, freezing white vapor rolled out, stinging her eyes. She leaned over the rim, shining the flashlight directly into the frost. Her heart didn't just skip a beat. It completely stopped. Staring back at her through a layer of solid crystal-clear ice was Arthur, her husband. His skin was a stark, unnatural shade of frostbite blue, his lips parted in a frozen, silent scream of agony. There was no mistaking it. The surgical scar on his jawline, the obsidian wedding band frozen to his rigid finger. It was him. He had been dead for months. A violent sob caught in Elena's throat. Her mind fractured. If Arthur is dead in this freezer, then who has been sleeping in my bed for the last 6 months? Who has been cooking my breakfast? Who is upstairs right now? Before she could even scream, the heavy wooden door at the top of the basement stairs slowly creaked open. A soft, warm glow of candlelight spilled down the stone steps. Then came the footsteps, unhurried, rhythmic. Elena spun around, backing herself against the frozen tomb, her flashlight beam shaking so violently it danced wildly across the damp walls. A tall, impeccably dressed silhouette materialized at the base of the stairs. It was Arthur. He wore his favorite charcoal cashmere sweater, his dark hair slightly damp from the rain, holding a steaming porcelain cup of chamomile tea. He looked handsome, flawless, and completely alive. He stopped, looking at the open freezer, then looked up at Elena. His expression didn't shift into anger. Instead, he offered her a warm, infinitely gentle smile. "You always did have a habit of wandering when the lights went out, darling," he said. His voice was an exact, flawless match of her husband's deep, soothing baritone. But down here, in the dead silence, Elena could hear something else beneath the words. A faint, rhythmic clicking sound, like a predatory insect mimicking a bird. What are you?" Elena gasped, her voice completely breaking as she pressed her spine flat against the ice. "Get away from me. Don't touch me." The entity taking the shape of her husband took a slow, deliberate step forward. The flashlight beam caught his eyes. For a split second, they didn't reflect human light. They caught the beam and flashed a vibrant, predatory, nocturnal golden amber, like an apex predator in the thick of the woods. "I am the man who loves you," he whispered softly, setting the teacup down on a concrete ledge without breaking eye contact. "I am the man who listened to every single one of your heartbreaks while the real Arthur ignored you. I learned how you like your coffee. I learned the exact cadence of your laughter. I became perfect for you." "You killed him," she choked out, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "He was greedy, Elena. He offered his own bloodline to the deep woods to secure his tech empire. He broke his pact with the ancient things. I simply collected the debt," the creature said, its face suddenly shifting. For a terrifying millisecond, the skin across his cheekbones ripples like liquid silk, the human features losing their grip before snapping back into a perfect imitation of Arthur. "But when I saw you, I chose to stay. I chose to play the part, and you loved me, Elena. You told me last night I was the best version of myself you had ever known." Elena's stomach turned to pure acid. She lunged to the left, trying to bolt for the stairs, but with supernatural, blinding speed, the creature was already there. He didn't grab her roughly. Instead, he placed one freezing, rock-solid hand on the wall beside her head, trapping her in his shadow. His breath against her neck was completely scentless, lacking the warmth of human life. "Here are the rules of our home now, my beautiful wife." The creature whispered right into her ear, his voice dropping into a chilling, possessive purr. "You will go back upstairs. You will sit at the dinner table. You will smile, and you will play your part perfectly. Because if you scream, if you run, or if you break my heart, I won't have to pretend to be human anymore. And you really, truly do not want to see what I look like when I am hungry. We are just getting started with the terror. If your heart is racing to find out how Elena survives sleeping next to a monster, smash that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below predicting. Will she escape, or will she fall for the creature? Let's see who gets it right. The chandeliers in the grand dining room were fully lit, casting a blinding golden glow over the marble floors and the pristine glass walls that looked out into the black pine forest. Music, a soft, melancholic classical vinyl, was spinning in the corner. Elena sat at the edge of her seat, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her fingernails were drawing blood from her palms. Across the long mahogany table sat the creature. He was elegantly cutting into a perfectly seared filet mignon, his movements fluid and aristocratic. "You're not eating, darling," he noted, not looking up. "Is the salt balance off? I'm just not hungry, Arthur." Elena forced the words out, her throat dry. Saying his name felt like swallowing glass. The creature paused. He lowered his knife and fork slowly. When he raised his head, Elena noticed the first major glitch. He was smiling warmly, but his eyes weren't smiling at all. They remained wide, fixed, and completely unblinking. Worse, the reflection of his face in the massive glass wall behind him didn't match his current movement. In the glass, his reflection was still actively chewing, a split second behind reality. The skin shifter was losing its absolute grip on the illusion because of her fear. "Elena," he said softly, leaning forward. "Your pulse is currently running at 140 beats per minute. Your sweat contains high concentrations of cortisol. You are looking at me as if I am an enemy. That hurts me. After everything I've sacrificed to give you this life, the least you can do is pretend to be happy." "How can I pretend?" Elena suddenly snapped, a surge of desperate adrenaline overriding her terror. She slammed her hands on the table. "You are a monster. You have my husband's face, but you are a hollow, dead thing. Every time you touch me, my skin crawls." The silence that followed was suffocating. The classical music seemed to warp, the pitch dropping into a low, distorted drone. The creature didn't yell. Instead, he lifted his right hand. Elena watched in absolute horror as the skin on his forearm violently glitched. The pale human flesh splitting open for a second to reveal a mass of shifting, charcoal-grey shadow matter that looked like writhing roots before violently knitting back into a human arm. "A dead thing cannot feel obsession, Elena," he whispered, his eyes locked onto hers with a terrifying, absolute intensity. "A hollow thing doesn't spend weeks studying the way your eyes light up when you're happy. The real Arthur cheated on you. He lied to you. He left you alone in this massive glass prison while he chased power. I gave you my presence. I protect you. Do not call me a monster just because my love is absolute." He stood up, walking slowly around the table. Elena froze, her breath catching. He reached out a hand, his freezing fingers gently tracing her jawline. His touch was cold, like ice straight from the winter woods, but his gesture was intensely tender. "We have a guest arriving in an hour," the creature murmured, pulling her chin up so she was forced to look into his golden-tinged eyes. "A business partner of the late Arthur, a greedy man named Marcus. He believes he can extort us for money. You will sit by my side, you will hold my hand, and you will look at me with devotion. If you give him even a single hint that something is wrong, I will show him what happens to men who interrupt a god's honeymoon. Do you understand me, Elena?" Elena looked past him out into the dark woods. The rain was slamming against the glass, and for a split second she swore she saw long, towering silhouettes shifting between the trees, as if the forest itself was leaning in to watch her captivity. "I understand," she whispered. "Good girl," the creature smiled, kissing her forehead. His lips felt like marble. "Now go to the library and compose yourself. I will join you shortly." Elena locked herself inside the massive, two-story estate library. Her hands shook as she immediately began tearing books from the shelves. She didn't look for modern fiction or tech journals. She went straight to the oldest section of the house, where Arthur's grandfather had kept records of the local territory before the foundations of the mansion were ever poured. She found it tucked behind a heavy leather atlas, a handwritten ledger from 1902, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. She flipped through the pages frantically, her eyes scanning the messy ink script until she hit a section titled, "The Mimics of the Deep Ridge." The passage read, "They are not ghosts, nor are they demons. They are the primordial consciousness of the earth, entities that have lived beneath the roots since before man had names. They do not possess a true form. They are shadows that hunger for identity. When a man enters a blood pact with the ridge for wealth, he offers his life force. But the danger is not the death of the man. It is what comes after. If a mimic becomes enamored with what the dead man possessed, it will take his flesh, consume his memories, and take his place. It will mimic his love, his walk, his voice perfectly." Elena gasped, reading further down, her finger tracing the faded ink. A mimic's illusion is bound entirely by the belief of those around it. If the one it claims to love rejects it entirely, the human skin begins to rot and fail. It requires total emotional submission to stabilize its stolen form. But beware. If a mimic's heart is completely broken by its chosen mate, the creature will lose all human restraint. The protective facade will shatter, and its true, devastating form will erupt to consume everything within its territory. Elena dropped the book onto the floor, her mind reeling. The illusion is held together by my submission. If I reject him, his skin fails. But if I break his heart completely, he turns into an unstoppable monster that will destroy everything. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the library clicked open. Elena scrambled backward, kicking the old journal under the sofa just as the creature stepped into the room. He had changed into a sharp, tailored black suit for the evening meeting. He looked like the epitome of wealth and success, but Elena could see it clearly now. The skin around his neck looked just a fraction too tight, the color slightly grayish under the library's chandelier. "Marcus has arrived," the creature said, extending his arm toward her with an elegant tilt of his head. "He is waiting in the drawing room. Remember your promise, Elena. The illusion must remain unbroken." Elena took a deep, steadying breath, suppressing the tremor in her knees. She stepped forward and slid her hand into his freezing arm. As they walked down the long, echoing corridor, she whispered, "Why do you care so much about what a mortal business partner thinks, if you're an ancient god?" The creature paused, looking down at her, his face softening with a strange, tragic kind of beauty. "Because I want you to have the world you deserve, Elena. I want to be the husband who protects your status, not just your life. To do that, the world must believe I am Arthur. But more importantly, I need you to believe it." Marcus sat on the velvet sofa in the drawing room, swirling a glass of expensive scotch with an aggressive, arrogant smirk. He was a heavy-set man in a flashy designer suit, his eyes sharp with malice. When the creature and Elena entered the room, Marcus didn't even stand up. "Arthur, my man, you look different," Marcus noted, his eyes narrowing as he analyzed the creature's face. "A bit pale, isn't it? The tech market keeping you up at night?" "I am perfectly well, Marcus," the creature said, taking a seat directly across from him and pulling Elena down next to him, his arm wrapping tightly, possessively around her waist. "Let us skip the pleasantries. My wife and I value our privacy." "Why are you here?" Marcus chuckled, a low, greasy sound. He leaned forward, setting his glass down with a heavy thud. "I'm here because I know your little secret, Arthur. I went through the company's offshore ledgers. 6 months ago, right before you vanished into this forest and stopped showing up to board meetings, $2 billion vanished from the main account, and your signature on the transfer. It didn't look right. It looked like someone mimicked it." Elena felt the creature's grip around her waist tighten instantly. The temperature in the drawing room plummeted. Her breath began to visibly mist in the air. Is that so? The creature said, his voice dropping into a flat, terrifyingly calm monotone. Yeah, that's so, Marcus sneered, completely oblivious to the danger he was in. He looked directly at Elena, giving her a slimy wink. And I think beautiful Elena here knows exactly what's going on. I think you're holding her hostage out here with that money. Or maybe you two staged his disappearance. Either way, here is the deal. 50% of the tech patent shares transferred to my name by midnight, or the federal authorities get a full report on your sudden disappearance. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket with an air of absolute triumph. I'll give you 20 minutes to talk it over with the wife. I'm going to use your restroom. Don't do anything stupid, Arthur. I have an automated email scheduled to go out to the feds if I don't punch in a safety code every hour. As Marcus walked out of the room, slamming the heavy wooden door behind him, Ella turned to the creature. Arthur, or whatever you are, she whispered, her heart hammering. He's going to ruin everything. If the police come down here, they'll find the basement. They'll find the body. The creature slowly rose from the sofa fixedly. The tailored black suit seemed to hang off him as his physical form began to rapidly destabilize from the intense fury rolling off him. The lights in the chandelier flickered violently, buzzing like dying insects. He threatens our home, the creature murmured, his voice now layered with a terrifying dual resonance. A human voice overlaying a deep, rumbling, tectonic growl from the earth. He threatens the life I built for you. Watch the glass, Elena. Do not leave this room. Before she could stop him, he vanished into the shadows of the hallway. Elena stood frozen in the center of the room 2 minutes past. Then 3. The storm outside reached a deafening crescendo, a bolt of lightning striking a nearby pine tree with a roaring crash. Then came the sound from the hallway. It wasn't a human fight. It was the sound of heavy, brutal meat being slammed against solid stone. Marcus let out a high-pitched, choked scream that was cut off so violently, it sounded like a wet rag being snapped. Elena lunged toward the glass wall, her eyes wide with horror. Through the transparent glass overlooking the outdoor stone courtyard, she saw them. Marcus was on his back, on the rain-slicked stones, trying to crawl away in pure, unadulterated terror. Towering over him was the creature, but he wasn't Arthur anymore. His human skin had completely split down the spine, hanging off his frame like a tattered coat. Beneath it, his true form was expanding. A massive ethereal entity made of shifting charcoal shadow, twisting wooden roots, and sharp obsidian stone protrusions. His eyes were giant, burning pools of blinding golden amber light that illuminated the entire stormy courtyard. The shadow creature reached down with a massive arm made of living stone and roots, gripping Marcus by the throat. With a single, effortless lift, it raised the grown man into the air. "Please!" Marcus screamed, his face turning purple as he kicked his legs wildly. "What are you? What are you?" "I am the master of this ridge," the entity's voice boomed, rattling the glass walls of the entire mansion vibrating deep within Elena's chest. "And you are nothing but dust on my floor." With a horrific, sickening crunch, the roots wrapped around Marcus's chest tightened, crushing his ribs instantly. The shadow entity opened its massive, featureless maw of darkness and literally tore the life force directly out of Marcus's body, leaving his empty, lifeless shell to drop onto the stones like wet cement. Elena backed away from the window, her hands covering her mouth to suppress a scream of absolute horror. She was trapped in a house with an ancient, apex predator of folklore, and it was coming back inside for her. This is the ultimate peak of the nightmare. The creature has just shown its true, devastating form. We are moving directly into the massive, twisted finale right now. If you want to see more high-end psychological folklore stories like this, hit that like button right now and comment "monster" to push this video to the algorithm global elite tier. The heavy French doors to the courtyard slowly swung open. Cold rain and the smell of ozone and wet earth flooded into the drawing room. Elena retreated until her back hit the far wall, her eyes locked onto the doorway. A silhouette stepped through. The mass of shadows and roots was rapidly constricting, compressing itself back down, forcing its violent mass into the tiny, fragile shape of a human being. Within seconds, the pale skin knitted back together, the tailored black suit aligned, and Arthur stood before her once again. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving as if the physical act of staying human was an exhausting, agonizing torture. He looked down at his hands, which were still slightly grey and trembling, then looked up at Elena. His expression was a heartbreaking mix of monstrous possessiveness and raw, human vulnerability. "He is gone," the creature said softly, his voice cracking slightly. "He can never threaten your safety or our wealth again. I protected you, Elena. I destroyed the man who tried to extort us." Elena was shaking so violently she could barely stand. She looked at the man who had her husband's face, but all she could see was the giant shadow demon from the courtyard. "You're rotting," she whispered, her voice laced with an intense, calculated coldness as she remembered the words from the old journal. The illusion is bound by her submission. If she rejects him entirely, his skin fails. Look at yourself. You can barely keep his face together. Your hands, your eyes. You are falling apart. The creature gasped, a sharp intake of breath as if her words were physical blades. He stumbled backward, looking into the large gilded mirror on the drawing room wall. To his horror, she was right. The skin across his left cheek was violently splitting open, turning into rough, dry charcoal grey stone texture. The diamond blue human eyes were losing their colour, turning completely into a flat, glowing amber. "No! No!" The creature panicked, his voice distorting, layering with that terrifying rumble. He lunged toward her, falling to his knees at her feet, gripping the hem of her dress with his cracking stone-like hands. "Elena, please, do not look at me with such hatred. I need you to love me. If you reject me, I cannot hold this form. I will become the shadow again, and I want to be human for you. I want to love you as a man." Elena looked down at him. This was her chance. If she broke his heart completely, if she told him she hated him with every fibre of her being, the journal said his human form would vanish completely, but it also said he would lose all restraint and consume everything. If she submitted, she would live in luxury, protected by a literal god who worshipped her. But she would be sleeping with a monster for the rest of her life. The creature raised his face to hers. Half of it was still the handsome, perfect version of Arthur, tears of clear human water streaming down his cheek. The other half was a terrifying, cracked visage of ancient stone and dark, writhing shadows. "Choose, Elena," the creature wept, his voice a haunting, beautiful, and terrifying symphony of a dying man and an awakening monster. "Tell me I am your husband. Tell me you accept me for what I am, and I will build an empire for you that will last 1,000 years. But tell me you hate me, and I will let the shadows consume us both tonight." Elena stood at the precipice of absolute power and absolute terror. She looked at his hand, then looked into his glowing amber eyes. She slowly reached down, her trembling fingers hovering over the cracked stone texture of his cheek. She opened her mouth to speak her final irreversible verdict. What did Elena choose? Did she accept the monster to rule as a queen of the Deep Ridge? Or did she reject him and unleash the apocalypse inside that glass mansion? The story isn't over. Your comments will decide the sequel. Subscribe right now, smash that like button and leave your theories below. The most liked comment determines Part 2.